Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus said to his disciples, "Be watchful, be alert. You do not know when the time will come. It is like a man traveling abroad. He leaves home and places his servants in charge, each with his own work, and orders the gatekeeper to be on watch. Watch, therefore. You do not know when the Lord of the house is coming, whether in the evening or at midnight or at the cockcrow or in the morning. He may not come suddenly and find you sleeping. What I say to you, I say to all, watch." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
My brothers and sisters in Christ, we begin today the season of Advent, which is a word which comes to us actually from the Latin word adventus, which means coming, the coming of Christ. We are waiting and anticipating the coming of Christ. It is a time of penance. You notice that the priest wears purple and everything is dressed in purple. If you go back to church history and you go throughout the ages, you'll see that the Advent season was always a penitential season. It was always a season of sacrifice. At one time, the Advent season lasted 8 weeks. There was a time when it was 7 weeks. And then they actually broke it down to a miniature Lent. It was actually 40 days. And it was an entire season of penance. You didn't eat meat any day, not just Fridays, but you didn't eat any meat. And you sacrificed a lot of things. It was a penitential season just like Lent. And the idea behind it was basically to help the human being to strip himself away from the worldly things that he's connected to, even on a human level, and to allow himself spiritually to prepare himself for the birthday of Christ. And that's what the Advent season is really all about. That's what it's supposed to be about. What is it now? It's a shopping season, which begins at 6 o'clock on Thanksgiving evening. Everybody has sales, and everybody runs all over the place. For the next few weeks, we'll all be running all over the place, buying things, doing this. What am I going to get for Christmas? What do you want for Christmas? What can I get you for Christmas? And so, but what about Christ? What will happen at Christmas time when the baby Jesus is brought into the church? And we will offer the holy sacrifice of the Mass. And God himself will be here. Body, blood, soul, and divinity. The Eucharistic Lord. What gift will I have prepared to give to him? Oh yeah, I've got everything for everybody else. But I have nothing for Christ. But isn't the entire mystery of Advent and Christmas about Christ? What I like about Tennessee is the fact that people are not afraid to put up signs that say Merry Christmas. There's a lot of places you go, you won't see that. Happy holidays. Really? We don't even have a holiday unless we have Christ. So at least Merry Christmas points us in the right direction. And I'm grateful that I see those signs, but remember that that word, Christmas, is a little bit misspelled, actually. Because the way the word comes into use in the Catholic faith is in the Middle Ages, when people fasted for long periods of time and things were coming to an end. And they were on the way to the Mass. A lot of times they hadn't seen many of their neighbors unless they saw them on Sunday, barely because they had to work and so on and so on. They didn't have a whole lot of interaction with each other, but on the way to Mass, they would see each other, run into each other. Remember, there was a time when there was only one Christmas Mass, and it was at midnight. You didn't have children's mass at 6 o'clock. You didn't have an evening mass at 8 o'clock. You didn't have a morning mass at 8 and 10:30 or whatever. You had one mass. You had a midnight mass. And the reason for that being is tradition tells us that Christ was born at exactly midnight in Bethlehem. And at that moment, time stopped all over the world. All flowers and all trees instantaneously came into full bloom. Whether the weather was warm or cold, it didn't matter. And everybody knew that there was something significant taking place here. But the idea basically is people went to church at that midnight mass. Everybody knew they had done their penances, they had done their fasting, and they wished a grateful joy to each other. And they would say to each other, "Have a wonderful Christ's Mass." It's where the word Christmas comes from. There's an S missing. Now, a lot of us will get Christmas cards that say Merry Christmas. And we'll get it from people who are atheists, who may not even be Christians. We'll get it even from Christians. And we'll get it from Catholics who have no idea that it refers exactly to the midnight mass of Jesus Christ being born in Bethlehem. Christ's Mass. That's how the word comes into use for us Christians. That's why I say I'm happy to see, when I see Merry Christmas, at least we're halfway, most of the way there. More than halfway. Because the rest of it we can put in there, Christ's Mass. Now, I also know this parish hasn't had a midnight Mass for a while, but you will have one this year. We will have a midnight Mass here. And I have to do all the other Masses that go with it, of course, the evening Mass, the morning Mass. If it was up to me, I'd say one midnight Mass, and I'd invite everybody to come. The idea has always been, in liturgical law and even in canon law, the idea has always been that a priest is only allowed to say one Mass on one given day. Because they wanted the community, the church wants the community to gather together as a family. Everybody comes to that one Mass like we used to do in the Middle Ages. And we come together as a family, rejoicing, getting to know each other, meeting strangers and other people. But nowadays, we're divided. You know, we'll have a Mass at 7. We'll have the midnight Mass. We'll have an 8 and a 10:30 Mass, and everybody will go to whichever Mass they want to go to. But the midnight Mass, we'll make it the high Mass with the incense and all of that. You certainly are. If you're here, you certainly are invited. And like I said, remember, the canon law still says a priest can only say one Mass. There's been an indult that was granted by, I think, Leo the 13th or Pius X early on, probably about 100 years ago, where they allowed that a priest, out of necessity, if he needs to say another Mass, he may do so. But what's happened now is the century has gone by, and now we just say a Mass just to add Masses a lot of times. Nobody really seems to know why, and bishops don't really care. And we really lose the perspective of that community experience. Can you imagine at Christmas time this entire church and our back room and everybody here, seats there, and we have one Mass. It's the high Mass. There was a time period when the Mass lasted. It started at midnight and lasted until sunrise. 6.5 hours. That's how they celebrated the birthday of Christ. What a wonderful idea, huh? Man, I'd love to prepare a homily for that Mass. I already do pretty long homilies anyways, so it would just be a little extra longer, that's all. but I'm sure most people would fall asleep, so we can't really do it that long. But I have no doubts that some of the Orthodox churches probably still do that today. They certainly, I know, do it at Easter time, but it used to be a custom also in the Latin Rite as well. They do it at Christmas, till the sun came up and everybody went home. They ate and opened their Christmas presents. But remember, the idea of Christmas presents here, since we're talking about it, isn't in the same way that we do it today with all of its commercialism. Why are we getting gifts when it's not our birthday? Now, there's nothing wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not Scrooge. I'm not saying to you can't give Christmas presents. Not the point. But what happens in the process, a lot of time, I think we give our young people this understanding. They make a nice long list. This is what I want for Christmas. But in the end, what are you going to give to Christ? We forgot to teach them that part of it. So if they don't get what they want, they start throwing tantrums. And we who are elderly, a little bit older, if we don't get what we want or we get something we don't like, we'll take it back to the store and get the money back that somebody spent on it. We'll ask for the receipt so we can return it. Is that what Christmas is really supposed to be all about? Christmas really is about giving a gift to Christ. And the Advent season is about preparing ourselves for that moment. Shopping comes, the idea of Christmas exchange, and people always say to me, "Oh no, that comes from the Magi." No, it doesn't. We didn't borrow that idea from the Magi at all. It's not even rooted in the Magi. In the year 1200 and something, when St. Francis was alive, he died in 1224 A.D. The custom was that people brought to the midnight mass clothes, some food for the poor of the community, families that had nothing or had very little. And it was given to them. There was nothing expected in return. Nothing. We did that for centuries. The poor were the focus. It was for them. Of course, then the modern age comes, commercialism comes, and we sort of kind of get caught up in all this. We got to buy and do this and do that, but we forget sort of the mystery of giving something, what we're supposed to do, give something to Christ, and maybe to bring something to the poor, to somebody who has nothing, to help them, but not to expect anything in return, but to be grateful that Christ came into the world, that he came in Bethlehem into the world to save humanity, to redeem mankind, and to redeem you and me. Because without it, heaven is closed. Without it, we have no sanctifying grace. The human being without Christ is incomplete. We need the living God to make us complete. That's why we go to church. That's why we offer the holy sacrifice of the Mass to call down from heaven the body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ. And we as Catholics have the opportunity to receive him. We don't have a religion of a book like the Muslims and the Jews and the Bible Christians. We have a religion of the living God. That's why Peter had to give the answer to Christ the way that he gave it. But who do you say that I am? You are the Son of God. You are the living God. That had to be there. Because in every period of history, Christ comes to us alive. Otherwise, we simply have a 2,000-year-old birthday cake. That we have a cake, we put 2,000 candles on it, we sing happy birthday to Christ. But at Christmas time and at every Mass, it's a miniature Christmas. Because at every Mass, we have the opportunity to receive Christ. At Christmas is sort of the high point of the year when we are reminded that Christ came into the world to give himself for me, but also to give himself to me, that he may come and dwell within me. As St. Paul says so beautifully, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. That's the whole mystery of Catholicism. It has been from the very, very beginning. There's no other religion, and there's millions of religions on the face of the earth. Go to India, 30 million different gods. Look at all the other religions, even the main religions. None of them have a God that they consume and eat. None. That's the beauty of Catholicism. It's been that way from the very, very beginning. At Christmas time, we remember that great mystery most of all, that God comes to dwell within us, because without God, we are incomplete. In order to be fulfilled, in order to be happy, we need Christ. But we always try to find our happiness in many other things. And that's why we find ourselves oftentimes depressed, unhappy, angry, frustrated, full of hate, confusion, depression, you name it. Because we don't have that room in our beings for God, and we don't understand the mystery. When Christ comes to us, we treat him as a dead God. Simply as if he was just a symbolism, it was just a symbol. Instead of the actual presence of the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. And we have forgotten these mysteries, but Advent is a time to kind of refocus. It's a time to slow down. But through these last many years, what do we do during Advent? We go shopping, we go to Christmas parties, and we drink. We drink the spiked punch, right? I stopped drinking the punch long ago because I got no idea what's in it. But that's what we do. We celebrate Christmas parties, and there's nothing wrong with having joy. Don't get me wrong, but if we forget that it's about Christ, you're there for the wrong reason. You're there for the completely wrong reason. But nowadays, to go to a Christmas party and to mention Christ and to be filled with joy because we're celebrating the birthday of Christ, you'd probably be taken out back and shot. At least flogged. That's where we are today. Advent is about shopping. When it's really supposed to be a time of slowing down, a penitential season. Detach yourself from things and attach yourself to God. And when you can do that, Christmas becomes an experience for you. It's not just an act to do something, but it's an experience that you have with the living God. And you are fulfilled because His presence comes to dwell within you. And we'll talk a little bit more as we get closer to Christmas about a lot of the theology that goes with all of that, that we get from the church fathers as well. And today, just a little reminder from the Gospel of Mark, certainly, to be on watch. And you don't know when the Lord of the house is coming, whether evening or midnight or cock or in the morning. This is not a reference to a particular time period. It's a reference to the period of our lives when death will step into our existence and we have to say goodbye to this world. To be always prepared every day for that moment. But most of us are thinking about tomorrow. We're going to do everything today to make tomorrow better. What if you don't have tomorrow? What if God calls you home today and you're not prepared? What are you going to do then? When are you going to prepare? You remember the old adage, the road to hell is paved with a lot of good intentions? Oh, I was going to do it. Yeah. Oh, Lord, I was going to prepare. I'm sorry I didn't have time. You took me out of the world before I had time. I was going to do it sometime down the road somewhere. I'm too young now. I'll do it later. No, you have to do it now, today, here and now. And the season of Advent reminds us of that preparation to prepare ourselves to stand before the judgment seat of Christ. And just to give you a hint, you talk about this Advent wreath here and the 4 candles. It's a miniature. It symbolizes 4,000 years of anticipation for the Jews of the coming of the Messiah. The church 200 years ago cut it back to 4 weeks for that reason. Because we are in miniature celebrating 4 weeks, those 4,000 years. Now, what's interesting, though, Christ is foretold for 4,000 years by the Jewish prophets. When he came, they did not recognize him. They nailed him to a cross. He was the most despised and despicable human being as far as the Jews were concerned. That's why they wanted to see him dead. If for 4,000 years and they didn't recognize Christ, what are we going to do in 4 weeks? How are we going to prepare? What are we going to do? Slow down. Detach. Do your shopping, get it out of the way, and then take some time maybe to do something for Christ. Maybe go to the daily Mass during Advent. Maybe practice doing a particular virtue instead of operating on the vice, and maybe to not curse, to not yell at my spouse or my kids, not to get angry, not to have a hatred for someone, to forgive someone who's done me wrong. All those things are part of what we're supposed to do for Advent. But you know what we'll do? We'll bury all of that, and then we'll go spend some money on our credit cards and things. And when Christmas comes, all we say is, I'm glad it's done. Isn't it true? That's sometimes what we do every year in and year out. Nothing changes. I want to encourage you to make this Christmas a little bit different. Do whatever you got to do as far as your shop is concerned. Take care of it. And then make an effort maybe to read the Bible, to read some of the lives of the saints, maybe to read some of the mystics of the life of Christ, maybe to read some other things that will lift your mind and elevate your mind to God. Like I said, maybe a daily Mass or whatever. These are all opportunities, hopefully, that we do have. Remember, it's a choice that we have to make. No one's going to force us to do it. If you want Christmas to be a real experience, then you're going to have to do something in Advent to allow that to be a real experience when the time comes.